to be with you. My name is Jane Harrison. I work for North Carolina Sea Grant, and I just want to give a shout out to my colleagues who worked on this project with me. I believe Dr. Erica Young is here with us. She is our marine education specialist. Also, Eric Herbst, who is our marine aquaculture specialist. So they were really instrumental. North Carolina Sea Grant is a NOAA program based at NC State University. And then we also had fabulous partners, which I think will be on the next slide, you'll see. But again, this whole presentation is about education on the North Carolina Oyster Trail. And yes, we celebrate it. So the North Carolina Oyster Trail is something I've been coordinating since 2020, and it's really a grassroots effort from people who love our state's oysters. So originally the idea came from our shellfish growers that they wanted to have a platform to share everything they're doing to, grow both the supply and the demand of oysters and shellfish in our state. So because our shellfish growers are busy running their businesses and out on the water, they often do not actually have the time to do the education and public awareness that's needed to support their industries. So that's where North Carolina Sea Grant and North Carolina Coastal Federation came together with the Shellfish Growers Association to start the trail. And the Coastal Fed is a nonprofit based in North Carolina that is a really critical partner. I work with day in and day out actually on the Oyster Trail. So I want to thank them, Aaron Fleckenstein, Victoria Blakey, Bonnie Mitchell, all kinds of folks there with the Coastal Fed that have been instrumental on this project. So what can you do on the Oyster Trail? I just have to set this up a little bit. If you haven't been on one, one of the things you can do in North Carolina is tour an oyster farm. So you can get out on the water, you can eat oysters there. You can get on a boat. You can see how they're grown. You can see the cages there in the background. Next slide. You can taste the rainbow of North Carolina oysters. So we're all about our miroir, just how do they taste, depending on the salinity, depending on what they're eating, the different water bodies they come from. And so on the trail, we actually have 90 places that you can visit that have something to do with North Carolina oysters. That could be a seafood restaurant or market. That could be, again, a shellfish farm tour. That could be some kind of an education center where you're going to learn about the role that oysters play in our ecosystem. Next slide. And like I said, definitely get educated on the trail. So you're going to learn how they're grown. You're going to learn the difference between wild and cultivated oysters, about all of the benefits that they provide to our coastal and marine ecosystem. And so that education is really underpinning the trail. And anyone who wants to be a trail member or be a site has to be educated themselves. So we have a lot of educational resources we provide, and even a quiz that if you can't pass it, you can't be on the trail, because these are our ambassadors for our shellfish industry, and we want them to be, well educated themselves. Next slide. So with support from eeBLUE, we were able to do a few things in the last year that we couldn't have done without you all. So thank you. One of those things that we did is we developed a traveling oyster photo exhibit. Apologies, I can't see the bottom of the slide, so I'm not sure if anyone else can, but I think what it says is, if I recall correctly, is that we have been able to organize and put on 15 events across the state that will have 3,000 viewers by October 2025, so this fall, and this is to show off all of our facts about oysters and shellfish in the state with beautiful photography and a little bit of a story. So the photographs come from a professional photographer, Justin Case Condor, that again, with eeBLUE support, I was able to pay to come out with me to go and visit with oyster growers, with the folks who run our shellfish hatcheries, with our wild oyster harvesters, and again, tell that story through really compelling imagery. And I'm not the one who's putting on all these events. this. Really, this is a passive education display that I can then lend out. So we printed 3 versions of this, and it's 7 3 by 3 feet posters that can be put up around a room at a special event, or maybe as an exhibit, at a maritime museum, or some kind of environmental event, or a brewery. And so we have a lot of folks that are partnering to, show these off across the state. Next slide. This is just an example of what 2 of those posters look like. So the, one on the left, really the takeaway is that half of North Carolina's oyster production now depends on aquaculture. But this poster on the right, we really want to still emphasize that wild oyster harvest is a coastal tradition. What we see in our coastal areas is, this traditional livelihoods, commercial fishers that are still involved with oysters. But then also we have this innovative industry, dependent on aquaculture, that is making sure that we have the oyster supply we need to meet demand. 10 years ago, I couldn't have run the oyster trail because there weren't enough places to go in the state that could showcase North Carolina oysters. There just wasn't enough supply. But with aquaculture, now we have oyster bars and restaurants that can feature North Carolina oysters year round, and they couldn't have before. Next slide. So also with support from eeBLUE, we hosted 2 educator workshops on shellfish mariculture. We had 17 educators attend. These are high school science and career and technology program educators, teachers, as well as informal education, folks. So these are people that are getting out across the state. We had people come inland, people come from the coastal areas that wanted to understand, okay, how can I bring shellfish mariculture into my classroom? Next slide. And what the educators did in that workshop, those workshops, was they were exposed to a series of lesson plans. These were developed some years ago by North Carolina Sea Grant, but what the educators did was they both found out about them, but then also they started to modify them for their learning environment. So they started to think about, okay, what can I do with this? And from that, they also provided us with feedback about, hey, you could improve these lesson plans. Here's how. So instead of these just living on our website and hoping, a teacher comes across them, now we have 17 educators who are fully aware of them and can bring them into their classroom and plan to. Next slide. And during our workshops, we had some really fun interactive elements. One was we got to visit the Carteret Community College Aquaculture Laboratory. And this is a working lab where they are growing all different kinds of species, from oysters and clams to sea urchins to marine ornamentals, and even algae culture you can see here on the right. And we got to go around and meet with the aquaculture technicians who have to run this place. And I think these are the kinds of experiences that the educators can't forget. And I'm really, looking forward to hearing their stories, of telling their students about this. This is a career that you could get into. Here are all the different ways that aquaculture, is useful in our community. Next slide. These are some of the results from the workshop. So, these educators, they want to teach the public about sustainable practices. They want to speak confidently about aquaculture. And now they have better, view of ways to present information about aquaculture and mariculture. They see the conservation education angles. And you can see here just some of their improvement in understanding. So, before the workshop, this is all a scale of 1 to 5, 1 where they are not very familiar, 5 highly familiar. And so you see these improvements across the board. Now they can actually, accurately define mariculture. They understand whether farmed oysters can be eaten in June. Yes, of course. And they know about more mariculture careers, for example. Next slide. All right. Well, that's about it for me. What I'll ask from you before I go, though, is if you could take a moment to follow us. If you are on Facebook or Instagram, you can find us. Check out our website, ncoystertrail.org. You can see our interactive map. Please visit one of our sites when you're visiting our state. And thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, with that, congratulations, grantees.